So Israel is definitely not ending its barrage on Iran. More of the Iranian leadership is dying. More of it is announced as confirmed. I think it was sort of like officially confirmed. The previous chief of staff is gone, and sort of some information has been revealed about that operation. That with him, 30 more people have died. Apparently, Israel found some either bunker or some basically installation, and they were able to take out everybody there. And I think also it was said they didn't get him at first. He was like fleeing or something, and then they got him when he was fleeing. So it's great to see that Israel is coming after you, no matter how much you try to flee or no matter how much you try to hide. There is no way to hide Ayatollah Khomeini, which is the person we're going to be talking a bit more about today. And hopefully, we won't have to be talking about him for that much longer. Joining me today is our Michael Kaufman, Jonathan Honig, and Iyar Reichel. Thank you guys for joining me today. And I'll go to you, Iyar, first. Great view of not Tel Aviv. I think you specified it's a city close to Tel Aviv. But yeah, Iyar, let me get some of your thoughts about how is it.
Tel Aviv and Ramat Gan. I hope you can hear me.
Yes,
I
now we
think
can
I
hear
got
you.
cut off. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
Now
sorry
we
for
can
that.
hear
I'm going to switch my Wi-Fi in a moment. I'm in the border between Tel Aviv and Ramat Gan, and I've decided to sit here to demonstrate the state of Israel. And I mean, like in the state of affair, not like in a country. That we're still thriving, we're still standing, and it's a beautiful day outside. So today I'll be streaming from here, and I'll get back to you soon after I fix my Wi-Fi.
Sure, we'll go back to in a second. I'll go to you, Michael. You haven't been on for a couple of days, so a lot has happened since then. So, yeah, what do you make so far of Israeli operations since the last couple of days? And I mean, I can bring one more thing. There's an estimate in Israel that apparently only about 100 launchers are left for the Islamic regime. So we know that Israel has been one of the reasons the Iranian attacks for a while have been getting weaker and weaker to at some point it being less than 5 missiles is because Israel has been both destroying launchers and getting rid of the launchers as soon as they try to launch. Michael?
Yeah, we'll get back to the 7 a.m. Israel time launch this morning. That was pretty destructive and infuriating. I mean, luckily, I'm not aware that anyone actually has died from that, but there were several serious injuries and so on, and then a lot of destruction. And of course, a hospital was hit, or as the American press likes to say, the hospital got in the way of the missile that was coming in, because our press is really despicable. I think from a much higher view, Israel is doing a marvelous job. I mean, this is finally the war that they're fighting to win. It felt different from the get-go. It was a multi-pronged approach, prongs that we don't even know about. The amazing work of the Mossad to build a manufacturing plant for drones inside of Tehran. And when they started bombing in Tehran, that the drones took off also, and a whole bunch of other amazing stuff, setting up the hotline that brought a lot of the commanders into one place and then taking them out and so on, and really bombing the heck out of them. This is not what you saw in Gaza. This is not the sort of Biden-esque one hand behind your back, let's apologize for every so-called innocent civilian that's going to die after you've been attacked and murdered and raped and pillaged. This is a war the way we think that America fought in World War II against both the Germans and the Japanese, and it seems like the intent here is to win. A couple of I think, rather silly things have been that we're saying we're not seeking regime change, but what we are seeking is that the nuclear ambition should all go away, and the entire missile stockpile should all go away, and the notion of proxy should all go away. Now, that would be like taking a lion and removing not only its claws but also its teeth and actually wiring its jaw shut and then feeding it through a straw through its nose. I mean, it's absurd when you try to take it apart and see what planet the people that are suggesting that such a thing could happen, that Ayatollah Khomeini, after so many years, after the revolution and his craziness and all the people he's killed across the planet, would suddenly renounce all that stuff. And that would be consistent with the notion that we don't need a regime change. So anyway, this is idiotic. I think finally, after the hospital was hit, we're finally saying what needs to be said, which is it's time to kill the guy. And it's time to completely cut off the head of the octopus.
I think yeah, your network is fixed, so let me go into to you for some of your thoughts from Israel.
All right. So once again, I'll start with the personal note. So in the past few days, I had the conviction that Iran's capabilities will be getting lower and lower and lower. And actually, this morning I was surprised. And I have to be clear about that. So this morning they've launched a barrage around 7 a.m. I went to shelter, and there was some loud explosions. A ballistic missile with a heavy payload landed around half a kilometer or a third of a mile next to me. Everything shook up. And while in shelter, as I said, we have network, so there were already the news came. A big office building quite in my neighborhood was struck, unfortunately. And luckily, since it was early morning, it was not yet fully facilitated. So as of now, the number of injured is relatively low. Another thing is that at the same attack, Soroka Hospital in Beersheba, which is a city in southern Israel, was hit, a direct hit. And I don't know if you talked about it in the previous show today. I'll say what I know is that we were very lucky. We did the right thing, and it came into our advantage because only a few hours before this missile attack, there was a decision to evacuate the above ground sections of this hospital and move the patients underground. And this saved many lives. It could have been an event with hundreds of casualties. And as of now, the amount of people injured and affected by this direct hit is low. Obviously, the damage to property is huge, but property can be fixed. So I'm very happy about that. My second point is I'll ask Daniel to show the last link I sent him, the tweet in Hebrew. And in the meanwhile, I'll say what it says. So basically, Israel's Minister of Defense says dictator Khamenei is modern day Hitler, and here I can see it now, who craved out on his banner the destruction of the state of Israel and is enslaving all of his country's resources to advance this terrible goal. He cannot continue to exist. So this is perfect. I would only add he also enslaves his own people, not only the resources. And I am very glad an Israeli official, the Minister of Defense, is explicitly saying Khamenei does not have any right to exist. And this also implies this regime has no right to exist. And this is what we've been saying in the past few days since the attack on Iran. We should have said it on day one. It's sad we had to wait for our hospitals to get struck for us to get the courage to say it. But once again, better late than never. So a thumbs up for our Minister of Defense. Our Prime Minister said things with similar spirit. So this is a massive advancement. I remind you that in today's modern world, the Western world has the power and tools and equipment and capability to destroy evil. The missing link is in the sense of having a proper moral view. So these statements are a huge step in the proper way for a good moral statement that will have ripple effect over this war and the regime.
Yeah, I mean, to jump to you, Jonathan, the fact is that, yeah, Israeli hospitals are now getting hit. I think Iran state media or sort of their X page has posted a picture of tanks being under Israeli hospitals. Now, that was clearly sort of like manufactured. That was not true. Everybody knows it's not true. But they are acting as if, basically what Iran is doing right now is the same thing that Israel has been doing in Gaza, which is, of course, ridiculous. And even Western media, Western leaders, international community know that Israel is not hiding military infrastructure behind hospitals or anything in that regard. But my question is, where is the outrage? I look up at Antonio Guterres X. He's talking about apparently today is the day of fighting against sexual violence. So he's posting about that, but nothing about the fact that civilians in Israel are getting targeted. And I don't see anybody talking about it. Like, this was one of the biggest things against Israel in Gaza. But now that Iran is doing it, doesn't seem like it.
Yeah. And there's no outrage about Iran itself as being a legitimate state. Yar, I think, put it best. He said, this is an illegitimate state. And in the weeks after 9/11, you guys might remember Dr. Peikoff wrote an op-ed that was published entitled End States That Sponsor Terrorism. And Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. It has been for years. And I have to say, I know a number of you gentlemen are literally in the line of fire. You've been back and forth to the bomb shelter, Michael as well. But every day, the world is more safe thanks to Israel, thanks to Israel's willingness to go out and eliminate a clear and obvious threat. And, Dr. Brook, Yaron Brook, made a comment the other day on his podcast, which I think was very appropriate. He said that what Israel has done, if the regime topples, if Khomeini goes, this is the biggest geopolitical event since the fall of the Berlin Wall. And it really is, when you think of the scope of the entire Middle East could be changing here. The Ayatollah, is this his last days? Unquestionably it is. It's too bad because he could go kind of a Gorbachev, Yeltsin, Perestroika route. I mean, can you imagine him coming out, waving the white flag and saying, I renounce everything I said about death to America, death to Israel. I mean, could you imagine him, betraying these ideas that have fueled that hatred and that wanton destruction for so long? I don't see it. He is not a glasnost type of a guy. And what needs to be seen is that, following this death cult, in my opinion, following militant Islam, equates to death. It equates to destruction. So Israel's done a masterful job. Every day the world is more safe, thanks to the brave men and women of the IDF, the Mossad, and everyone in Israel who serves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the most beautiful things that could happen is if Khomeini is killed by his own people. I think that would be the most sort of symbolical. I think, I'm not sure how many dictators it happened to in the past, but I think the most prominent example is Mussolini, who was killed and hanged by his own people, who, because of how weak he was and how people recognized the weakness of it and switched sides because they understood they saw the writing on the wall. And if Iranians do the same thing, if this happens, and I'm not sure if there was any confirmation. A few days ago, there was a story about that the former president of Iran has been killed by Iranians. I'm not sure if you guys have seen any confirmation about that, because I haven't seen it since. But yeah, if something like that were to happen, that would signal to us that Iranians do want to get rid of this regime and they do want something different. I mean, to go to you, Michael, again, I still see some people talking about, it's better to have a devil than an unknown danger. So we shouldn't try a regime change. We shouldn't try to kill him, because at least now we know we don't know what will come in turn. What do you make of this kind of argument?
I make that those people are called cowards. And one thing is for sure is that you can be certain that things are not going to get any better if you retain this man in power. And we are told that 80% of the Iranians themselves don't want him in power. Now, it's a bit shocking how little we hear about any uprisings at all. I have heard reports that there are There are arrests, beatings, and killings by the guards and the police and everything about anybody who is trying to counter the ruling party right now. But these people are cowards, and humanity would never move ahead if every time we wanted to try something new, we stopped and said, well, we don't know what'll happen. I don't want to get too artistic on the show, but the whole play Hamlet was all about whether to be or not to be, and whether to get rid of the things that you know of and fly to others that you know not of, or is it better to just suck it up and deal with the current situation? And I remind everybody that everybody died at the end of Hamlet because a failure to act leads to death. And a failure to act in this case, we all understand that moving down through history, what's going to happen. This could only end the way it's ending. If we maintain this, if this Khomeini stays in power, where there are more missiles, there are more nuclear bombs. By the way, it's not just the nuclear missiles, it's the dirty bombs. And in case you didn't know, there are cluster bombs now that Iran is sending over to Israel, which is, of course, a violation of international law. But of course, international law doesn't apply to rogue regimes. It only applies to the US and Israel. So I think we need to completely discount these people that, they have an opinion, they're entitled to their opinion, but it's the wrong opinion. We need to give people an option for a better life. If they choose to go down a bad path again, we will have to cut off the head of that snake again. We'll do it. Or the head of the octopus again. We'll have to do it. But as Ayar said, and he's 100% right, the West has got to regain the will to do it. And part of the problem in the West is that we have all of these idiot students, and I use the term idiot nicely, idiot students who have been taught that Western values are bad, that the notions of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the concept of a meritocracy is bad. It's all the same thing that ends up with anti-Semitism, anti-success, anti-Western thought. And it ends up, and at least you see the true colors of these people, because you've got demonstrators in the US that are now actively pro-Iranian, which in a normal situation, they would be arrested. Because I can tell you, as a public company figure, I have to sign a document that says I don't do anything to support Iran. It is a defined terrorist organization, far worse, frankly, than Hamas and Hezbollah. I say throw out these people. And last point I'll make is anybody who's calling for a ceasefire now is one of these cowards. And anyone who's pretending that a diplomatic solution, which is the usual European baloney that gets thrown all the time, as if diplomacy has failed for 50 years, or 45 years, but it's suddenly going to work. This is cowardly.
Any deal, any appeasement is a win for the Ayatollahs, is a win for the mullahs. And it's such an amazing juxtaposition, Israel as against Iran. It makes me, think of Miss Rand's juxtaposition of, reason versus mysticism, for example. I mean, here you have Khomeini. What's the big picture here? Sacrifice to Muhammad, sacrifice to me, sacrifice to Iran. Your life is a brick in the wall, if you will, as against Israel. I mean, you look at the skyscrapers behind Yar. I mean, Israel and Tel Aviv is about business, self-pursuit, self-interest, trade, production, joy, values. I mean, that's always been my experience of Israel and of the Israeli people that I've grown to know over the years. So, it presents such a great juxtaposition, in my mind, not unlike North and South Korea or Cuba and Miami, whereas just a couple hundred meters oftentimes, you see these vast differences in life. And it's because of the ideas that they hold. So the Ayatollahs, does he have to go? I don't know, but his ideas sure have to if Iran's going to have a viable future.
Let me quickly thank our super chatters. We have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. And a super chat from Boy. He says, CNN be like Israeli occupiers hide behind hospital from Iranian defense strike. I mean, yeah, that's definitely the sort of attitude I'm at least feeling. Let me go to you, Yar, now. So one thing that I've been wondering about, especially when it comes to sort of both American involvement and what it would take, we talked about that a little bit in the morning, but Putin and Xi Jinping have been sort of like trying to say something. Putin has been poising himself as a negotiator or as a mediator, that's the word. I think he talked about that we need to ensure Iran's right to peaceful nuclear power and Israel's right to unconditional security of the Jewish state. So it's kind of sort of like trying to play both sides, but we know which side Putin is. Iran has been supplying Russia with its drones. They are allies. They wanted to create I'm not sure if it would involve that Iran would fully join the sort of the security agreement with Russia, but they are clear allies, have been for decades. This is clear, and sort of like trying to act as independent, trying to act as he doesn't have a horse in this race, where he clearly does. I mean, they've been allies in Syria. They have exactly the same allies. So yeah, I mean, yeah, what do you make of sort of like Russia trying to sort of put itself in, trying to say that they shouldn't continue because they'll suffer if the Iranian regime falls. They need it to stay afloat.
Well, I think Russia is playing on thin ice because they are, on the one hand, they understand that Iran is going down. On the other hand, Iran is their ally, and they've been cooperating in the past. So it's just whatever they say, just bear in mind they are lying, and they are just trying to promote this wicked interest of them. And it's just, I don't see it very important or relevant to try to understand them. One moment. And I would like also, before I go on with Iran and China, I would like to also touch on the point of mysticism that Jonathan brought up, because I think it's very relevant. And I'd like to compare it to Nazi Germany. So since 1944 and further, when Nazi Germany was in the brink of total ruin, basically the leadership of Nazi Germany held on to this mystical myth of how 100 years ago, 200 years ago, Germany was on the brink of ruin, and they had a miracle in some sort of a fight, and the tides turned, and they won, and they were sure that now they're going to win, and that like in 1944 and 45, a miracle is about to happen that will turn the tides, and Nazi Germany will rise as victor against the whole world. And they held on to this because they had nothing rational left. They never had anything strong to lean to. So it always eventually comes to mysticism with tyrannical regimes. And this also applies to Iran. And the story of Shiite Islam is full of irrational mysticism. Basically, there was an era of Muhammad. He is called the disappearing Imam. I don't know how to say it in English, but it's like the disappearing Imam, the one who's disappeared, and it's basically their Messiah. And they have this apocalyptic point of view that the end of the world is going to come. There's going to be a whole apocalypse, and then the Imam is going to come and save the Shias who believe in the Imam. So basically, the reason they're probably not going to surrender is because for them, in a sense, this whole disaster is a part of the prophecy. So they're basically saying, on the one hand, like, yeah, they want to destroy Israel, and it's not going that well for them. They're pretty much going down. But on the other hand, they're saying to themselves, okay, this is the prophecy coming true. The Imam is going to get up every moment and rescue us. So for me, this is one of the reasons they're not going to surrender. They're just going to be overthrown or completely defeated, because anything, like nothing rational is left. Everything is leading them into more destruction and more death and more wreckage. So this is just an interesting point on this regard. And regarding China and Russia, I think it's mostly about China. Like, China is the leader of the Axis, the real power. China is looking towards its small island neighbor they defined as theirs. They're looking at Taiwan, and they want to take over Taiwan. And this is just like an experiment in equipment. What they see in Iran and what they see in Russia. They're trying to see where the tides go, what America will do, how competent are their allies. And for us, for the side of the West, of Israel and America and Taiwan and Ukraine, the way this war is going is good news. And for China, it's bad news, because each one of their allies are going down one by one. And it's bad news for China and good news for us. And I think the United States, the rational minds within the State of Department and the Pentagon and the administration, they understand that, and they see this game China is playing and trying to understand where the tides are going. So I think this is also one of the considerations. Like, the United States joining Israel and destroying the regime in Iran is a big message to China. And I think if they'll use their minds, they realize there is no reason to give up this opportunity to bring a huge message to China.
Yeah, I think the China point is interesting. Oh, well, first I want to finish that point on mysticism, because especially in the last few years of Nazi Germany, the big thing was the Wunderwaffe, the wonder weapon. We'll just create this one weapon. It's going to be great, and it's going to destroy allies. And I think you are seeing something similar coming out of Iran, where every single night they are talking about, okay, this night something big will happen. This night something, and it's like they send 5 missiles, and this has happened like day after day. They keep saying the next one gonna be big, the next one gonna be big, but nothing's coming because it's not based on any rationality. They don't know if something big will happen. They just hope.
That's part of their self-deceit. They're trying to fool themselves the Imam will come. And I think that's pathetic and very funny to some extent.
Yeah, and sort of, oh, Jonathan?
No, please finish your thought.
Well, I'm going to China, so if you want to make something on...
Yeah, well, I just want to remind, we've got 200 people watching, not as many likes, so not only smash that like button, but share the show and support the show. We have gentlemen like Michael, very successful business people, young entrepreneurs like Yar, and who are actually in Israel, have been reporting for us on a daily basis. We're with you 7 days a week, and we're only able to do it through super chat contributions and annual subscribership. So become a member of what we're doing here with the Ayn Rand Center UK. And just this notion, when you said, Russia's belief that Iran has the right to XYZ, Iran has the right to this type of, enrichment or uranium or whatnot. Miss Rand, and I'm paraphrasing here, my understanding of Miss Rand's notion of rights is that it's rights respecting countries that have no rights. And this is my interpretation, is that Iran as a country doesn't have a right to anything. They do not respect their citizens' rights. They don't respect other people's rights. So they have no rights. And in fact, maybe somebody in Super Chat will remind me where Miss Rand said it, but she basically has said that you have the right to go and overthrow any non-rights respecting country. They have no right to nuclear weapons. They have no right to anything because they don't respect the rights of their own citizens. So, it's a really interesting point, I think, about saying, well, and this is why, again, my own interpretation of why the UN is so horrible. It gives a country like Iran the same one vote as a country like Israel, even though Israel is a country that is rights respecting, modern, technologically advanced, moving towards the future, and Iran, which is the exact opposite.
Yeah,
I'd like to touch on that.
Sure.
Okay, so I'd like to end on you, Jonathan. So Rand basically gives us the example and teaches us about the principle of right, and she shows this example of a criminal. So basically, right is a principle that protects people from coercion. It's a principle that allows freedom. So every person is entitled to this principle's defense until this person forfeits such principle. So when a robber goes to commit a crime, for example, in the United States law, so let's say a cop is coming to take him down and horribly it goes wrong and the cop accidentally kills a bystander. The criminal is the one charged with, who's entitled, responsible for the death. And not only that, he's charged for murder due to him committing the crime that led to the death, even though the policeman killed the guy. And this principle of one forfeiting his rights, one he commits a crime and uses violence and coercion, this also applies to tyrannies. And now I'll elaborate on tyrannies. So rights fundamentally belongs to human beings. First, a right is belonging to an individual. That's the most primary aspect of a right. Now, human beings are able, and this is very common in today's world and very good, people can unite and delegate the right to self-defense to the state. And then the state earns the right for self-defense because they are the representative and agent of the people, and they secure the right for life and liberty. In a tyrannical regime, this principle and defense is null and void. Because in the first place, the tyrannical regime is going against its people's rights, is the agent of destruction of rights, is the agent of coercion and destruction. Right. So such a country cannot defend the defenses that a normal and free country receives on the behalf of its people. That's actually the opposite. When a free nation attacks a tyrannical regime, in the long term, it secures the defense and rights of the people in the region. The only exception is when a democracy attacks a tyrannical regime and does not install a democracy or a right-respecting regime instead. And that's exactly what the West demands. The West demands, okay, you can only attack a tyrannical regime when you're facing the corner and about to die, but don't you dare to change this tyrannical regime. Don't you dare install a regime that respects human liberties and rights. And this is just the most cynical and evil way to go and virtue signaling and tell the world how good you are. You're basically telling people, don't you dare install a proper regime instead of those crazy tyrannical regimes. And this is just absurd, completely reversing morality.
Yeah, and even when it comes to, Putin talking about the Iranian right to have a civilian use for uranium or something, they had that. They were enriching their own uranium for civilian use, and then they decided that they want to make atomic weapons. And then Israel did something. This is exactly how it went. It's not like Israel started going after Iran just for simply enriching uranium. It was specifically, and again, I don't think we had to wait for Iran to get close to acquiring nuclear weapons for us to finally act. Iran has been saying they want to destroy Israel, has saying they want to destroy West since they came into power, since the Ayatollahs came into power. So we didn't have to wait. Now, we did, unfortunately, but to go to you, Michael, what do you make of this ridiculous idea? And we keep hearing this. As soon as Israel defends itself, it's, Iran has a right to defend itself. Russia has a right to defend itself. I mean, for people who have been following the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, the NATO is expanding eastward, so Russia has a right to declare war on its neighboring nations for some reason, because some nations decided voluntarily to enter a security agreement to protect themselves against Russia, which is invading its neighbors.
Yeah, look, the generation now and probably the last generation have been taught that everybody's entitled to an opinion and they're all equally valid. Now, there's another saying, and I'll pardon for being a little bit cynical and a little bit disgusting, but opinions are like buttholes. Everybody has one. And I'm sorry to be so blunt about it, but it is a huge problem that we have decided. It's sort of like the participation awards now that we have in America, that if you show up for sports practice and you're the worst player on the team, you get the same trophy that the most valuable player gets. We've decided that all opinions are equal. We've decided there's a large population in the U.S. that believes non-citizens, illegal immigrants have the same right to vote that legal immigrants and citizens have the right to vote to determine the future of the country. And frankly, if Vladimir Putin says something, well, look, he was elected, quote unquote, the president of Russia. A lot of people thought he should be the leader, so his opinion's valid. And it doesn't matter what his behavior is, and that's just his opinion. And we listen to these words. Now, you have him saying that, and we can all just agree that it's ridiculous. And if Putin says something, you should do the exact opposite for the most part. But you've also got, one of the more supportive European leaders, the head of Germany, saying to Israel, you're doing all the dirty work. It's absolutely terrific. And then she comes back after this hospital attack and says to Netanyahu, or maybe it was just before it, but with all the missiles raining down on Israel, she tells Netanyahu to just be, don't respond too strongly. Because, a few missiles here and there, especially if you can shoot them down, that's okay. It's really all right. And there's so many layers of the moral corruption. And this is someone who supports Israel, for at least somewhat in word. I mean, she's not going to put her soldiers or her ships or any of her military, such as it is, to help Israel. Don't believe that for a second. But at least, unlike the Britons, who maybe send a ship here and there because they might follow Trump, they don't even support Israel in name at all. All they're doing is supporting Trump because he probably called them up and said, get your butt off the ground and do something for a change, UK, instead of supporting Muslim terrorists. But you have a huge problem in the world. We have got to stop allowing opinions that are based on baloney to have the same moral standing as opinions that are based on foundational principles. And what's missing from America, at least, and I think all of the West, and has stood up so far in Israel, partly because Israel is dealing with the reality of broken principles, is this notion of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And what ER was getting into is that liberty means I can do whatever I want as long as I don't mess with someone else's liberty. And my liberty stops where your liberty starts. And by the way, if you do anything violent to me that's not self-defense, if you do anything violent to me, you immediately lose all of your rights. And you are subject to my wrath and frankly, all of my family's or my country's wrath. These foundational principles are gone. And we should stop looking to start, and I don't think in this show, I think we get that. But what's missing from the public discourse is that we end up discussing this stuff in the absence of any fundamental principles. And we talk about how people, they're just trying to have a different life. It's not the same as yours, but we think that wrapping women up and stoning them to death if they walk with the wrong guy or go out by themselves or something, or put their hijab on wrong, stoning them, that's just their thing. And if they marry their 10-year-old cousins, that's just their thing, and we should all let it go. That's what's gone. And until the West starts to believe in itself again, we are going to see the world devolve into this chaotic totalitarianism run by mystics and people who care nothing about human rights.
Yeah, and I want to sort of wrap up this part about, I don't know what to even call it, but sort of egalitarianism when it comes to judging different nations. And I'm sorry to drop this on you guys, but we're going to listen to somebody who definitely keeps talking about having an opinion. It's just a short 20-second clip. Jonathan, do you want to jump in with something first?
Yeah, quickly, just to thank Ginger Clark for her very generous contribution, thanking ER for a fine summary of rights. I appreciate that. And I also want to thank people like Shauna Thornton, El Rito, Toro Worldwide, Bonnie Bertrand. You are all monthly contributors. So you are all the ones that literally help us keep the lights on here at the Ayn Rand Center UK. Shauna, thank you so much. It's £5 a month. It's not that much. And we bring you 7 days a week original programming inspired by Ayn Rand's objectivism with people literally on the ground in Israel. So thank you so much for being part of the discussion. Christian Klein as well, Ginger, and with that, Daniel, let's see the clip.
Material effect that helped the United States. Russia is backstopped by China, and I recommend that you go there and see it. It is way nicer than Washington, D.C. Way nicer.
I don't understand. For some reason, you are really invested in defending Russia, and I don't get that. I'm not attacking you with that. I'm genuinely like, I don't get why you're so passionate about defending Russia.
Yeah, I definitely like the Ted Cruz's way of. I genuinely do not understand why do you keep defending Russia. So yeah, Tucker, the interview he had with Ted Cruz has been posted, and few clips are going around. And one of this is, he keeps talking, and people who saw his, I'm not sure if he called it a documentary, but sort of like a vlog style from Moscow, when he went to the supermarkets and look how what stuff they have here, and keeps talking about how like nice Moscow is. And I don't know what to do with this kind of not even propaganda, but this kind of misunderstanding of what nations are supposed to do and what is the sort of like the importance of freedom. That as long as like the metro station looks nice, you can be North Korea. I mean, if you go to North Korea, if you go through the where you are allowed to go, I'm sure it looks nice. I'm sure all of it is clean because none of it is used. Nothing in that country, nothing that you're allowed to see is sort of actually meant to be used by individuals with rights. It's all for show, and Tucker Carlson is playing his part. He's arguing that as long as metros looks nice, as long as the Red Square is looking pretty and streets are clean, we should abandon the West. We should abandon any notion of rights and quickly change the course. I mean, to go to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, well, I mean, with regard to Iran, right? I mean, even if Iran had a skyline like Israel, this is a country that, women have, as I understand it, basically no rights. Gays are thrown off buildings. The movement is an explicit supporter of Islamic totalitarianism and terrorism across the world, let alone the death to Israel and death to America. So, it's like this is a country that has no rights. I don't care how beautiful its skyscrapers, if they had them, would be. So they forfeit those rights when they abuse the rights of their citizens and others around them, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the notion of the last days of Khomeini, Khomeini is the spiritual leader of Islamic totalitarianism. I think he should be targeted. I mean, it's basically been the military heads that have been targeted thus far. But I think if the Ayatollah lives, I think Islamic totalitarianism lives. And he should be targeted because he is the spiritual leader for everything that has haunted the West since the late 1970s.
Yeah.
I have something to say in this regard. I see Tucker Carlson as a textbook example for the fallacy of argument by non-essentials. So when you look at, things happening and you look at all sort of facts and events, you need to understand the fundamental reason for such symbols and events to happen. So when Tucker is talking about how clean Moscow is, and is not like he's ignoring and evading the tyrannical nature of the Russian regime, this is the exact case. And we can also see it like people talking about Iran. And when Tucker talk about Iran and others talk about Iran, they talk all about these minor things from recent news and periodical events, and they completely evade and ignore that it's a tyrannical Islamic regime, that Iran and its proxies murdered hundreds of Israelis, American and French men, that it's the ideological engine behind the Islamic wave of terror since the 80s, that Iran was involved in practice in 9/11 and basically was hiding the terrorists and not stamping their passports before they flew to this act of terror. And they're ignoring that Iran is a tyrannical regime that destroys the rights of its own citizens. And they also ignore the reasoning that Iran is doing that from an ideology of tyrannical Islamist regime and the destruction of the West. Yet they're displaying those regimes as good regimes. So whenever you see somebody is giving excuses and ignoring relevant fact, you should point it out for him that he's basically is committing the fallacy of argument by non-essentials, and that's very important. This is the difference between reason and excuse, and we gotta stop allowing useful idiots to give these stupid excuses for tyrannical regimes to destroy the West.
Yeah, and I've seen sort of like similar things being argued. I'm not sure. I think it was Jackson Hinkle who posted something. Israel wants gay prides in Tehran, and this is what it's doing. And it was such a weird like statement to make because you have to realize how much you have to be on sort of the other side that you prefer sort of this. You prefer like an Islamic regime that is completely suppressing any sort of not only sort of rights of like LGBT people, but everybody's rights. And you'd rather have that Islamic regime than have some gay prides, which, you know, whatever your problem is with them, I think that is still a preferable alternative that should be clear to everybody with just a little bit of brain. But yeah, Michael, any thoughts on this?
Well, I think it's pretty clear. Look, Tucker Carlson was fired from Fox News, and that I don't mind saying I get more of my news from Fox than anybody else because it's painful to watch almost anywhere now. But Tucker has gone off the deep end. I mean, he's nuts. And yes, he has a following. I mean, the emperor who had new clothes had a following, and people were all cozying up to him and telling him he had new clothes, and it looked great, and he was beautiful, and he was stark naked. Just because people have followings doesn't mean they're right. And it gets a little bit back to our whole notion of opinions. You know, everybody in the world used to believe it was flat, except for a couple people. It didn't make it right. And to make another stupid example, but it's a timely one, is, as Bill Maher said, just because people voted that obesity is not a disease doesn't mean it's not a disease. People die early from obesity, from complications. So this notion that just because Tucker says it and he's amusing, and I don't think he's amusing at all. He used to be reasonably coherent. He's completely nonsensical. I love AR's philosophical points of view, but I think you can even get simpler about this. It's what you just said, Daniel. If you start very simply with people's freedom, then you're already done with 60, 70, or 80% of the countries that are around the world. The reason the UN is so screwed up today is because there's a majority of corrupt countries in it. And so you have a place like the UN Human Rights Council with people from some of the worst human rights violating countries in the entire world running it. And it doesn't legitimize it because we put a title of UN human rights on it. So this is what we need. We need some leadership in the world. We don't have it. We don't have it on either side of the aisle. And it's so simple. I think we on this show struggle to say these are fairly straightforward principles that have led to the evolution of the West, of Western thought and Western society, and the best human flourishing since the beginning of time. It was capitalism, it was freedom, it was democracy. It was all of these things that gave us 95% of the good things that we have from we're not going to die from our environment point of view that we live in today. And we have students who've been taught by the intellectuals to reject all of this stuff. And I don't understand why they've been taught that. I suppose it's because it's kind of old news, right? It's so simple, it's not even worth talking about. Well, here we are, we have to talk about it. And what we have to talk about is Putin has no credibility, he has no stance. And you don't have to call it a moral stance. His opinion is illogical unless you want to be an oligarch. If you're into oligarchy and you want to make billions of dollars by stealing from your constituents, much as he has done and his people have done, same with the leaders of Hamas, who are all living as multi-billionaires outside of Gaza and so on. It goes, the entire world is running this way. And what we don't have is people that are able to pinpoint the philosophical underpinnings of how we got here.
Well, Hamas leaders are not doing much living anymore. But
no, you know what I mean. The people that are overseeing who've lived in Qatar and so on since then.
Yeah. So something that has also happened, I'm not sure if it started already yesterday or today, is that some Israelis are finally coming back home to Israel because there was basically no flights, nothing was happening, meaning more than, I think, 100,000 Israelis were stuck outside of Israel. And the Ministry of Transportation has basically started figuring out both flights and ships to get Israelis home. Now, I'm very
Pardon me, including on Sabbath, apparently they just approved, which is a
it was
real
approved,
break.
okay.
The rabbi said it was okay to bring people back on Sabbath, which is a breakthrough.
Which it wasn't at first. I think there
No,
was.
it was not.
Yeah.
Correct.
First, they talked to Rabbi, and basically because it didn't consider itself a life-threatening situation at first. So that's why. But let's watch one of the planes and see what is the attitude of people coming back. So despite Israel still getting missiles coming in several times a day, despite the fact that these people have been stuck outside of Israel, the attitudes are still high. Everybody's still happy or sort of is energized. And I think it talks a lot about the Israeli spirit right now, the fact that everybody, I think Israel is now more united than ever when it comes to fighting the Iranian threat and sort of laughing in the face of it as well. Iyar, anything you'd like to say before we part our ways?
I agree with the objectivist definition of pride, which is the reward and knowledge that you're thriving towards moral perfection. And I think the Israelis coming back to Israel, even though the situation in Israel is difficult and there is war and ballistic missiles, yet they are very happy and proud to come back. They're celebrating that they finally can return to Israel and take part in working their careers in the war effort, whatever. And in other situations, people would be frightened and trying to escape, but people here trying to return. People even try to come to Israel through neighboring country, like flying to Egypt dressed up like traditional Muslim clothing, and then like making their way to the border with Israel and stuff like that. So I share this sense of pride with those Israeli people on the plane, and I'm proud to be here in Israel. And let me know when it's time for my final word so I can shout out and everything.
You can do it now.
Okay, so I'm an associate in the Ayn Rand Center Israel, and I call you all to visit www.aynrand.org.il/about. And also, I'm a part of the movement of Victory Now. We're working on a book so we can show the world and to Israelis the moral case behind Israel's victory and show a plan for victory. So if you're interested in that project and want to follow and contribute, please visit www.victory.now.
Jonathan, any last thoughts from you, and where can people find you?
Sure. Just thanks to the supporters of the Ayn Rand Center UK. I've been involved in a number of books. Probably the one that's most appropriate today is a new textbook of Americanism. Miss Rand defined Americanism in the 1940s in a series of Q&As, which we then republished in 2017. It's called A New Textbook of Americanism, The Politics of Ayn Rand. It's available at Amazon and hardly recommended for those in any country of the world.
And we have super chats from Boy. Thank you so much. He says Tucker laughing like Nicholson as the Joker. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Anne, for your super chat. She's asking, Michael, has your view of Bibi changed, or is it to be decided? Michael?
Look, the fact that Bibi finally decided to fight a war by fighting it instead of whatever the heck he's doing and continues to do in Gaza, which, by the way, is still going on, and we still don't have the hostages back and so on. No, I think, honestly, Bibi's behavior with Iran is terrific. It's shockingly good. I think his new chief of staff has a lot to do with that. But I don't excuse him for all of his previous behavior. I think he's a despicable person. I think he's become corrupted. He was a great leader for Israel for a long time. He got in bed with the wrong people. He's catering to zealots in his side, all of them do not want their people to serve in the army, all of whom are supporting essentially parasitism. People who study the Bible in Israel, the Hasidim, do not have to pay taxes, and they get stipends, and their kids don't go to the army. And asking other people to not only pay for your life, but to pay for your kids, to put your kids' lives up for those people is egregious. And to have a government institutionalize that and support that, especially now that we're finally trying to get a bill. The Supreme Court in Israel has already ruled on this. It is absolutely a violation of the Israeli. It's not a constitution, but it's the closest thing they have. It's a violation. And Bibi is slow walking it. There's still no decision on this. And meanwhile, my kid and others are fighting on the front. Michael Kaufman, 2Fs. I want to do an outreach there for Yar's book. I think the victory that the project, he and I have met on this, and it's a hell of a good project, and we frankly need more of that. So have a look at that, what he talked about. It's absolutely terrific.
So, and you'll be able to find all the links in the description. I'd like to also mention that on July 1st, there's going to be a live daily objective. If you like this, you can come and meet us live in Boston, July 1st. Michael Kaufman as well as Jonathan Honig are going to be there. Maybe Yar as well. I'm not sure if there was any update on this, but he said he might join us as well. And I'll be there as well as many other people, from the channel. So putting the link in the chat to come there now. And thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you everybody for watching, and bye-bye.
Thank you.